Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Srimad Bhagavatam Canto Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your association and presence. Today we're going to continue Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 1, Canto 1, Chapter 13, verses 8 to 13. Dhritarashtra quits home. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Prayusha Sarva Vaireka Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidvando Didaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churn from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prompt transfer fruit of all the Vedas, O you enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are Chula Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshashavayate, Savrada Sarva Sevyaya, Shri Krishnaya Namastute, O Srimad Bhagavatam. I offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading one attains transcendental bliss. For your syllables rain pure love of God upon the reader. You always to be served by everyone, for your incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madhika Bandhu Mad Sangim Mad Guru Maham Mad Madhika Bandhu Mad Sangim Mad Guru Man Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute, O Srimad Bhagavatam. O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisances unto you. Asadu Sadhu Tadahin Attini Chochataraka Anamuncha Kada Chinmam Premna Ritkatyospura, O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplift to the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest. Please become manifest upon my heart and my throat, company and pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmadyasya Yatonvayaditaratas, Charte Swabhigna Swaraha, Ene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye, Muyanti Yatsuraya, Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo, Yatrati Sargom Risha, Damna Svena Sadani Rastakuakam, Satyam Param Dhimahi, O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of God, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destructions of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahman, the original living being. By him, even great sages and demigods are placed in illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of what is seen in fire, land, seen, and water. Only because of him did material universes temporarily manifest, but the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent and transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanalpaisha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuga Jana Manda Sumanda Madeo Manda Bhagya Padrita, Ulanad one in this age of Kali, many but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all always disturbed. Narayam Namaskritya Naracheva Narothamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tako Jaya Mutirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mata Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savaipum Soparodar Mo Yuto Bhaktira Rakshaja Ahituka Pratyata Yatma Suprasidati, supreme occupation dharma for all humanities, that by which man can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to complete satisfied self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayacha Vairagyam Yanam Chayat Ahitukam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of God Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires, causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedanti tattva-vidas tattvam yachkananam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learn a transcendentalists who know the absolute truth, called this non-dual substance, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Shru Shru Shosha Dadanasya Vasudeva Katarchi, Syan Mahatsavaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranrutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridantastoya Badrani Vidunati Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor, truthful devotee, cleanses desire from material enjoyment. From the heart of the devotees who develop the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatum Bhagavati Utama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. By regular attendance in the classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of God, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of Divine Grace, Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya within the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome back. Let's cover some feedback. If anybody has from last week's session, Canto 1, Chapter 13, the first 7 verses, 1 to 7. If there was anything that caught your attention that you'd like to share in terms of feedback, please put that in the chat. We'll just give a few minutes before we continue with today's verses. Thank you. Shavina says, Haribo, please accept my humble obeisance and appreciation. In the previous class, the important point for me is that the Sankirtan Yajna given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is more powerful than all other sacrifices. In last week's class, the important point was that one must cry for Krishna, and if one cannot cry, well, then one must cry that one cannot cry. Yes, 2 nice points that you brought out, Sharina. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's process for this age is no doubt very, very powerful. And it's described that even the sages, many of the sages feel that Kali Yuga is actually more beneficial, or those who are born in Kali Yuga that embrace the process are even more fortunate than the previous ages. Because what was achieved with great effort, time, resources in the previous ages can be achieved in this age simply by Sankirtan Yajna, congregational chanting of the holy names. In one conversation or discussion, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that just 3 days out on Sankirtan, going out on the street, book distribution, just 3 days out on book distribution and Sankirtan, congregational chanting of the holy names in the streets, is equivalent to 10,000 years of meditation in Satya Yuga. So the benefit of the process that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave for this age is no doubt extremely powerful. And in fact, in some case, even a greater blessing. Because in the previous age, you had to be really qualified to perform those practices. In Kali Yuga, you could be the most fallen and yet engage in the most simplest of process, chanting Hare Krishna. And the fact about crying for Krishna. In the material world, people cry for different reasons. If you lose something that you're attached to, generally you would cry. If your loved one is inflicted with pain, then you would cry. So something that is connected deeply to your heart, when an unfortunate event occurs to that object or personality, then you cry. Okay? Similarly, in relation to Krishna, when we realize Krishna is very much part of our existence and we cannot live without Krishna. Krishna becomes our life and soul. That's when our heart begins to move in relation to Krishna. At least I can speak for myself, because that connection, that deep heart-to-heart connection is not there, then that lamenting for Krishna, crying out for Krishna, trying to get his association is not there. Like when new couples meet, and if the parents say, nope, you should not get married, then they begin to cry. Because of that bond, then they cry. So we need to revive, rekindle, establish that bond with Krishna. Then we can begin to feel that separation and cry. So the more we advance, the more we become purified, the more our relationship and our heart connects to Krishna, the more we will begin to experience and feel that separation and begin to cry. So it's a sign of advancement. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna, thank you for nice class last week. It was really wonderful hearing all about those wonderful personalities. First test tube babies, Krishna choosing the actors for dramas, etc. And also for explaining how Srila Prabhupada is our ever well-wisher, which is very important to note. Also, the letter on Kartik month, how Srila Prabhupada is explaining how we should use this opportunity to connect others with Krishna. It is not good enough that we have the holy name, books, etc., but we have to share with others as well. This way, everyone benefits and Krishna is pleased. We can't be misers and hoard all these gifts that Srila Prabhupada gave us. It is 47 years today. Srila Prabhupada was here in South Africa in 1975. That's right, October. Visiting Durban, Pietermaritzburg, Johannesburg, Wits University, Lodium, etc., traveling at the age of 79, despite so many challenges to plant the seeds of which we are taking advantage of now. He even received a copy of the newly printed Srimad Bhagavatam 5th Canto, correct, while here at the Yeovil Temple in Johannesburg, and lectured. In fact, there's a nice picture of that. Yeah, and lectured at Wits. So we are eternally indebted in so many ways. Yes, wonderful. Thank you for highlighting that. And it's also in relation to what we're going to discuss, places of pilgrimage. So the one point that you brought out, which was very pertinent and relevant, and that is that we have something, at least we have been given something that is extraordinary, that is glorious, that is wonderful, that is real, and that can make us ecstatic, blissful, happy. And everyone out there, some know it, others don't, are looking for exactly the same thing, Krishna consciousness. We may have also been in the same boat, like those that didn't know they're looking for Krishna consciousness. But somehow or other, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and what Srila Prabhupada has created in the form of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, by the mercy of the followers of Srila Prabhupada and those who are giving Krishna consciousness, we have somehow or other come in contact with Srila Prabhupada and his movement. And I'm sure we all can say truly say that it has been the greatest blessing to be connected to Srila Prabhupada in this way. So that blessing we also have to extend. And if we do not extend this to others, then that becomes the greatest disservice. Just like having medication that can cure a disease that has broken out into a country. If you have the medication and you don't distribute that medication to heal people, then that is tantamount to killing. So yes, we have to really try our best to extend ourselves in giving Krishna consciousness to others. Very, very important. And if we can't do that, then we should assist others that are trying to do that. In that way, be able to connect and assist. But a very, very important aspect. Prabhupada impregnated this principle of preaching and giving Krishna consciousness to others very, very deeply and profoundly into his followers. And therefore we see that his followers, Prabhupada's immediate disciples, in the early days had this amazing spirit of spreading Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada would initiate somebody 2-3 days and then send them to a country to preach Krishna consciousness. He gave them that empowerment, that inspiration. So this needs to be revived, rekindled. And it can only be rekindled if we ourselves are convinced of what we got, so that we can share and spread that across. So a very, very wonderful point. And we will touch on your, extend on your second point when we get to that verse, Srila Prabhupada's visit to South Africa. Thank you very much. Let us proceed. So we're going to be covering verses 8 to 13, conversation between Yudhishthir and Vidura. Vidura arrives at Hastinapur, and we read how he was received very, very wonderfully. The life of the residents of Hastinapur came back into their bodies. It was like they were living, but living dead. And when Vidura arrived, it was like life coming back into them, because he was such a great personality, supporting, inspiring all of them. So they were very, very happy to receive Vidura. Text 8. Yudhishthir uvacha api smarata no yusmat bhaksha chaya sameditan vipadganad visag visagna yadir mochitayat samatrika. Yudhishthir said, "My uncle, do you remember how you always protected us, along with our mother, from all sorts of calamities? Your partiality, like the wings of a bird, saved us from poisoning and arson." So Yudhishthir, the first response or the first question is in relation to gratitude. He's extremely grateful for what Vidura had done for them, and he's asking Vidura if he remembers all those incidents related to how he protected them. Due to Pandu's death at an early age, his minor children and widow were the object of special care by all the elderly members of the family, especially Bhishma Dev and Mahatma Vidura. Vidura was more or less partial to the Pandavas due to their political position. Although Dhritarashtra was equally careful for the minor children of Maharaj Pandu, he was one of the intriguing parties who wanted to wash away the descendant of Pandu and replace them by raising his own sons to become rulers of the kingdom. Mahatma Vidura could follow this intrigue of Dhritarashtra and company, and therefore, even though he was a faithful servant of his elder brother Dhritarashtra, he did not like this, his political ambition for the sake of his own sons. He was therefore very careful about protecting the Pandavas and their widow mother. Thus, he was, so to speak, partial to the Pandavas, preferring them to the sons of Dhritarashtra, although both of them were equally affectionate in his ordinary eyes. He was equally affectionate to both camps of the nephews in the sense that he always chastised Duryodhana for his intriguing policy against his cousins. He always criticized his elder brother for his policy of encouragement to his sons, and at the same time, he was always alert in giving special protection to the Pandavas. All these different activities of Vidura within the palace politics made him well known as partial to the Pandavas. Yudhishthir has referred to the past history of Vidura before he's going away from home for a prolonged pilgrimage, pilgrim's journey. Yudhishthir reminded him that he was equally kind and partial to his grown-up nephews, even after the Battle of Kurukshetra, the great family disaster. So Prabhupada is just recollecting the history, and the next verse also Prabhupada will share different incidents, the next purport. So the point is Vidura, because we read of his amazing qualities, he was extremely pious, he was aligned to Dharma, and he would tell the truth, and he guided with that principle. So naturally, whether it was the Kauravas or the Pandavas, he would make sure that he guided them away from adharma and on the path of Dharma. And because the Pandavas were aligned to Dharma, naturally, Vidura was inclined to supporting them and protecting them. Whereas the Kauravas, headed by Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, because they were against adharma, then Vidura would also warn them that this is incorrect, and in this way apparently seem partial, but rightfully doing what was best according to the principles of Dharma. Before the battle of Kurukshetra, Dhritarashtra's policy was peaceful annihilation of his nephews, and therefore he ordered Purojan to build a house at Varnavat. And when the building was finished, Dhritarashtra desired that his brother's family live there for some time. When the Pandavas were going there in the presence of all the members of the royal family, Vidura tactfully gave instructions to the Pandavas about the future plan of Dhritarashtra. This is specifically described in Mahabharata Adi Parva 114. He indirectly hinted, a weapon not made of steel or any other material element can be more sharp to kill an enemy, and he who knows this is never killed. This is to say, he hinted that the party of the Pandavas was being sent to Varnavat to be killed, and thus he warned Yudhishthir to be very careful in their new residential palace. He also gave indications of fire and said that fire cannot extinguish the soul, but can annihilate the material body. So when the Pandavas were leaving Hastinapur and going to Varanavarta, then Vidura, this is how he bid them farewell. He bid them farewell with these statements, and this statement that Prabhupada is quoting, that fire cannot extinguish the soul, but can annihilate the material body. So he was indirectly hinting of what they should be aware of. And Yudhishthira Maharaj was putting these hints together. And eventually, when they came to the house of luck, Yudhishthira was able to understand exactly what transpired. And this is how they were able to actually escape by the mercy of Vidura. But one who protects the soul can live. Kunti could not follow such indirect conversation between Yudhishthira and Vidura. And thus, when she inquired from her son about the purport of the conversation, Yudhishthira replied that from the talks of Vidura, it was understood that there was a hint of fire in the house where they were proceeding. Later on, Vidura came in disguise to the Pandavas and informed them that the housekeeper was going to set fire to the house on the 14th night of the the waning moon. It was an intrigue of Dhritarashtra and that the Pandavas might die altogether with their mother. And by his warning, the Pandavas escape through a tunnel underneath the earth, as that so that their escape was also unknown to Dhritarashtra. So much so that after setting the fire, the Kauravas were so certain of the death of the Pandavas that Dhritarashtra performed the last rites of death with great cheerfulness. And during the mourning period, all the members of the palace became overwhelmed with lamentation, but Vidura did not become so because of his knowledge that the Pandavas were alive somewhere. There are many such instances of calamities, and each of them Vidura gave protection to the Pandavas on one hand, and on the other, he tried to restrain his brother Dhritarashtra from such intriguing policies. Therefore, he was always partial to the Pandavas, just as a bird protects its eggs with its wing. So Vidura, no doubt, was a great benefactor and well-wisher and protector of the Pandavas. And Yudhishthir Maharaj was presenting his gratefulness in this way by asking, "Do you remember all the different ways you protected us? How can we even forget that those events of how they were protected?" Kaya vritya vartitam vas charabdi shitti mandalam tirthani shetra mukhyani sevitani ya bhutale. While traveling on the surface of the earth, how did you maintain your livelihood? At which holy places and pilgrimage sites did you render service? So after sharing his gratitude, he now asks Vidura, and is curious from Vidura, how did Vidura survive and maintain his livelihood while traveling on different places of pilgrimage? And specifically, interesting, nice question here. At which holy places and pilgrimage sites did you render service? Sevita niha bhutale, word sevitani. Generally, the concept of visiting holy place of pilgrimage that people have is like a tourist attraction, tourist site, visiting. Okay, if you go to a travel agent and you tell the travel agent, okay, we're going to go to India, then they have a list of travel sites, right? Tourist attraction sites. Okay, we'll go here, we'll go here, we'll go here, we'll go here, and we'll spend 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, and have a list. See, that is going on touring and not going to pilgrimage sites with the intention of rendering service. And Prabhupada would, in his lectures on this point, would always say that, we don't go to pilgrimage places and just see places of pilgrimage. Then it's like being like a buffalo, different than a buffalo who's there, who's taking part in in the kunds that are there and the waters that are there. So we want to understand this principle of going to holy places and rendering service. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport also highlights this point. Vidura went out from the palace to detach himself from household affairs, especially political intrigues, as referred to year in before. He was practically insulted by Duryodhana's calling him a son of a Sudrani, although it was not out of place to talk loosely in the case of one's grandmother. Vidura's mother, although a Sudrani, was the grandmother of Duryodhana, and funny talks are sometimes allowed between grandmother and grandchildren. But because the remark was an actual fact, it was unpalatable talk to Vidura, and it was accepted as a direct insult. He therefore decided to quit his parental house and prepare for the renounced order of life. This preparatory stage is called Vanaprasthashram, or retired life for traveling and visiting holy places on the surface of the earth. In the holy places of India, like Vrindavan, Haridwar, Jagannath Puri, and Prayag, there are many great devotees, and there are still free kitchen houses where persons who desire to advance spiritually. And there are still free kitchen houses for persons who desire to advance spiritually. Mahayudhishthira was inquisitive to learn whether Vidura maintained himself by the mercy of the free kitchen houses called chakras. So the first point I was making, that at a certain time in one's life, one needs to detach oneself and now renounce oneself and focus on traveling. That's retired life, traveling and visiting holy places. Prabhupada makes the point that in Krishna consciousness, our retirement is really also going to holy places, visiting holy places, but also focused on preaching, focus on serving, focus on Krishna consciousness. So the principle of becoming detached from worldly entanglement, worldly activities, and eventually trying to focus more and more of one's energy and time in Krishna consciousness, this is the principle. When one comes in this world, one comes into the world as a baby, dependent, and then one grows up as an adult, taking responsibilities and have certain duties. But one should not live with those duties till one dies. At a certain point, one needs to appreciate and understand that now I need to dedicate my time fully in the service of the Lord. Otherwise, it would mean that one is still engrossed with the daily activities, and if one leaves one's body in this consciousness, it's not the best, it's not the most favorable. Therefore, the Vedic system was that at a certain age, and generally after 50, there's the aspect of semi-retirement, where the husband and wife now goes, the family is now big, the children are big, they're married, they got their own, they're supporting themselves, and the husband and wife then goes to holy places to on pilgrimage. So in this way, they now slowly detaching themselves from those household activities in raising children, supporting children, etc., and trying to now become more Krishna conscious. So in this way, we find that the Vedic system was helping and assisting people to become more and more Krishna conscious at certain periods of their life. Srila Prabhupada has given us Krishna consciousness, and that practice of Krishna consciousness is not at a certain time. So it's not like, okay, only at 50 I start practicing Krishna consciousness. No. The process that Srila Prabhupada has given us is very practical, that even from the age of 5, one can start applying that process throughout one's life. So even as householders who have duties in Krishna, or let's say family duties, even with that family responsibility, we also still practice Krishna consciousness and apply the process of Krishna consciousness. We don't wait for a certain time. So that's the first point we have to appreciate, which is a little different in terms of the Vedic system. In the Vedic system, there was specific periods. In Krishna consciousness, the basic practice of Krishna consciousness is applied across all ashrams and across all time frames. But as one becomes more settled, and when the family becomes more settled, then we should take on more and more time out to spread and practice Krishna consciousness. So for example, chanting more or going out and preaching more. So our time now is given more and more to Krishna than to the family members, etc. We've dedicated our life more. In fact, that's the beauty of the youngsters that join Srila Prabhupada. Normally, the majority part of one's youth is dedicated to one's personal development and family. But we find that the youngsters that joined Srila Prabhupada in 1960s, they gave their most precious, valuable time to Srila Prabhupada. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada would be eternally grateful for that, because most people would dedicate that time for themselves and for their families. And then when they now 60, 70, they would say, okay, right, now I got some time, let me see what I can do. But then you don't have energy, your senses are bland, you have so many illnesses, you can't, your energy is low. So you're not as productive and effective as a youngster, right? Where Srila Prabhupada had an army of youth going out and spreading Krishna consciousness. 20, most of them were like between 20, 23 years old. And they were practically spreading Krishna consciousness. So Vidura retired and then went out on places of pilgrimage. And in India, the system is that there are these kitchens called chatras, and they would serve. So anybody can come in there. They would get free prasadam, and there are also places where you can stay, and there may be some facility that you have so that you can, very simply maintain yourself and focus on Krishna consciousness. So this was the whole system to help people become more and more free and focus on the holy places in India. I'll connect the previous verse and this verse. This verse is a very, very important verse in the Bhagavatam as well. Very wonderful verse quoted by Srila Prabhupada as well. Bhavat vida bhagavatas tirtha bhuta swayam vibho tirti kurvanti tirthani swanta stena gadabrita. My Lord, devotees like your good self are verily holy places personified, because you carry the personality of Godhead within your heart. You turn all places into places of pilgrimage. So generally people go to places of pilgrimage to become purified. Here in this verse, Yudhishthira Maharaj is glorifying Vidura, that personalities like you, Bhavat Vida Bhagavatas, Bhagavatas like you, who carry the Supreme Lord in their heart. When you travel to holy places, or when you travel to any place, then you make that place, you turn that place into pilgrimage. So Shamana Prabhu mentioned how Srila Prabhupada came to South Africa, visited Durban, Johannesburg. That means Prabhupada placing his lotus feet on the soil of South Africa and the different places that he visited, transformed those places into places of pilgrimage by their potency, by their purity, by the fact that they keep Krishna, they carry Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in their hearts. So when pure devotees travel to places of pilgrimage, there's a different effect. So let us read Srila Prabhupada's purport and then we'll expand a little. The personality of Godhead is omnipresent by his diverse potencies everywhere, just as the power of electricity is distributed everywhere within space. Similarly, the Lord's omnipresence is perceived and manifested by his unalloyed devotees like Vidura, just as electricity is manifested in an electric bulb. And here Srila Prabhupada is hinting. For example, we may want to influence our family members to be Krishna conscious. We may want to influence our friends to be Krishna conscious. We may want to inspire others in Krishna consciousness. Instead of just speaking and using our own ability, we allow the Lord in the heart to do that. How? And Prabhupada is giving the point, making the point here that the personality of God is omnipresent by his diverse potencies. And just as the power of electricity is distributed everywhere within space, similarly, the Lord's omnipresence is perceived and manifested by his unalloyed devotees like Vidura, just as electricity is manifested in an electric bulb. So as soon as electricity goes in an electric bulb, that electric bulb lights up, and we can understand that it's the function of the electricity. If we bring Krishna more and more into our own life, without we even doing anything, just by our presence, Krishna, who's in our own life, will act like that electricity, and others will see that impact. Others will see see Krishna very visible through our presence. So the more we become Krishna conscious, the more we bring Krishna in our life, automatically that presence of Krishna in our own life will be experienced by others around us. And this is the best way to impact and transform others around us that we associate with. A pure devotee like Vidura always feels the presence of the Lord everywhere. He sees everything in the potency of the Lord, and the Lord in everything. The holy places all over the earth are meant for purifying the polluted consciousness of human beings by an atmosphere surcharged with the presence of the Lord's unalloyed devotees. So we're not, it's not that there's only holy places in Vrindavan or in India. No, holy places are all over the earth. And because of the presence of unalloyed devotees who carry the Lord, that atmosphere where they are becomes surcharged, and those who come into that environment, their consciousness, their polluted consciousness is purified. So this is the power and the potency of pilgrimage places, is that when you enter into that environment, your consciousness becomes purified by that environment alone. And very often people that go on, like when you go to Vrindavan or Mayapur and different holy places, you can feel the effect of the holy place. You find that the impact of the modes are reduced. You're able to chant more rounds, you're able to be more Krishna, just by the fact that you're there in that surcharged, Krishna conscious surcharged environment. If anyone visits a holy place, he must search out the pure devotees residing in such holy places, take lessons from them, and try to apply such instructions in practical life, and thus gradually prepare oneself for ultimate salvation, going back to Godhead. To go to some holy places or pilgrimage does not mean only to take a bath in the Ganges or Yamuna, or to visit the temple situated in those holy places. So this is the instruction as Prabhupada is giving of what we should be doing at holy places. One should also find representatives of Vidura who have no desire in life save and except to serve the personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada's point here is very, very nice. One should go to holy places. One should take lessons, find the pure devotees that are residing there, take lessons from them, and try to apply that practically in our life so that we can go back to Godhead. That is the reason why these holy places are there. It's not a tourist attraction. It's not just a tour. And so I went to Haridwar and went to these places and I saw very nice. No, that's not the goal of going to holy places of pilgrims. One time in Krishna Leela, early in the morning, Krishna gets up and he sees Nandamaj and they're making arrangements. They're setting up the bullock cart. in the Bolakad, there's different preparations. Seems like they're going out somewhere, and the whole of Vrindavan is all preparing, all excited, going somewhere. So Krishna, young baby Krishna, comes out and he says, asks his father, what is going on? Where are you going? And Nanda Maharaj says, oh, we're going to Prayag. We're going to the holy place of Prayag. And Krishna says, why are we going there? He says, no, it's a holy place. So we're going to visit the holy place and we're all going. And Krishna, he made a promise that he'll never leave Vrindavan. So Krishna was thinking, I don't want to go out. Told Nanda Maharaj, told his father, why don't we leave tomorrow? And Nanda Maharaj said, no, we all prepared, everything is ready, we should go. No, we have to go tomorrow. So after convincing Nanda Maharaj, everybody decides, okay, we'll go tomorrow. So it was postponed for the next day. Early in the morning, Nanda Maharaj, he goes and takes his bath at Nanda Sarovar. It's like they have their own bathing place, bathing ghat. So early in the morning, Nanda Maharaj is going to take bath in his Sarovar, and he notices at a distance this huge person who goes into his bathing place and then comes out. It's like he's somehow in ecstasy and moving in all directions. And Nanda Maharaj looked at this person who repeatedly goes into his bathing place, comes out and looking very crazy. Somehow he's overcome with ecstasy, he's not conscious of the environment, and he's wondering, who's this person? I never saw him before. So Nanda Maharaj comes close and asks him, who are you? I have not seen you before here. And this personality says, oh, I'm Prayagraj. And Nanda Maharaj was shocked. Like, really, what are you doing here? And he says, I've come to your bathing ghat. In fact, when Nanda Maharaj inquired, who are you? And when Prayagraj mentioned that actually I'm Prayagraj fell at the feet of Nanda Maharaj, and offered prayers. And Nanda Maharaj was shocked, like, yes, we're going to see Prayag, and Prayag is coming to my bathing place. And he says, what are you doing here? He says, well, everybody comes to Prayag to visit me, and they drop their sins in my body. And I come to your place and bathe in your place and relieve all the sins that have accumulated. And Nanda Maharaj connected this point to what Krishna was saying, that there's no need to go there. Why are we going to Prayag when Prayag is coming to my own bathing place? So he could understand that actually Krishna was right. And in this way, Krishna arranged this pastime to show that actually when the pure devotees go to holy places, they really purify the holy places of all the sins that have been accumulated there. This was also the question that Mother Ganga placed before Lord Krishna. 5,000 years ago, Mother Ganga told Lord Krishna, that in Kali Yuga, people will come and bathe in my bodies and I'll be taking all the sins. How am I going to get freed from all these sins? And Krishna told Mother Ganga, don't worry. When devotees who glorify the holy names of Krishna across the globe, when they come and bathe in your holy place, in your holy body waters, they will absorb, they will purify you of all the sins that have been accumulated. So the power of pure devotees, this verse is talking about how pure devotees, wherever they go, they transform that place into places of pilgrimage. We find there's a nice verse also glorifying the pure devotee, that just by seeing him, one gets purified. You have to go and bathe in the Ganges to be purified. But the pure devotee, just by sight, just by seeing him, one can get purified. This was the power. That is why we find, for example, the book Science of Self-Realization, that has this beautiful cover of Srila Prabhupada's picture on it. Somebody may say, oh, but that picture, why are you putting a picture of Prabhupada there? But if somebody picks up that book and just sees the picture of Srila Prabhupada, without even touching that book, just by seeing that book, they get purified. What to talk about touching the book? What to talk about reading the book? This is the power. So we cannot underestimate the power of associating with pure devotees. The personality of Godhead is always with such pure devotees because of their unalloyed service, which is without any tinge of fruit of action or utopian speculation. They are in actual service of the Lord, specifically by the process of hearing and chanting. The pure devotees hear from the authorities and chant and sing and write the glories of the Lord. Mahamuni Vyasadeva heard from Narad, and then he chanted in writing. Sukadeva Goswami studied from his father, and he described it to Parikshit. That is the way of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, by their actions, the pure devotees of the Lord can render any place into a place of pilgrimage, and the holy places are worth the name only on their account. Such pure devotees are able to rectify the polluted atmosphere of any place, and what to speak of the holy places rendered unholy by the questionable actions of interested persons who try to adopt a professional life at the cost of the reputation of a holy place. People would take advantage of holy places and set up a business, right? Professional, some exploitative type of method too, because people, they know people come here, so then they exploit people in this way. But really, we have to respect the holy places. One of the offenses is called Dhammaparad. We should be very careful when we go to holy places because they are holy, they are special places, and we have to honor them and avoid offenses in these places. At the same time, when we go to these places, it's all about hearing Krishna consciousness from the pure devotees and begging, praying to become engaged in the service of the Lord. 11. Apina suridas tata bandava Krishna devata drishta shrutava yadava swapuyam sukham ashate. My uncle, you must have visited Dwarka. In that holy place are our friends and well-wishers, the descendants of Yadu, who are always wrapped in the service of the Lord, Shri Krishna. You might have seen them or heard about them. Are they all living happily in their abode? Now Yudhishthira Maharaj is inquiring about Dwarka and Krishna, the Yadavas, because if Vidura went on place of pilgrimage, no doubt he must have visited Dwarka. So now Yudhishthira's attention is going towards the Yadavas. And very interesting purport Srila Prabhupada is now going to share in terms of these two verses that we're going to be covering. So first, what are the devotees of the Lord doing? The particular word Krishna Devata, that is those who are always wrapped in service of Lord Krishna, is significant. The word Yadavas and the Pandavas, who were always wrapped in the thought of Lord Krishna and his different transcendental activities, were all pure devotees of the Lord like Vidura. Vidura left home in order to devote himself completely to the service of the Lord. But the Pandavas and the Yadavas were always wrapped in the thought of Lord Krishna. Thus, there is no difference in their pure devotional qualities, either remaining at home or leaving home. The real qualification of a pure devotee is to become wrapped in the thought of Krishna favorably. That is, knowing well that Lord Krishna is the absolute personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada is giving a definition of the real, or giving the real qualification of a pure devotee. That a pure devotee is one who's wrapped in the thought of Krishna favorably, not like Kamsa, as Prabhupada is going to talk in the following sentences, but favorably. So to be engaged favorably in the service of the Lord by thinking. So this word rapt attention, rapt in thought. Our thinking should be always on Krishna. And this has to be cultivated. We have to practice to always remember Krishna and never forget him. It's not automatic. It's not that we always will think of Krishna. In fact, in this material world as conditioned souls, our nature is that we are always forgetful of Krishna. We will always forget Krishna. But the more we become Krishna conscious, then slowly our thoughts now are directed more and more towards Krishna. We begin to think of Krishna more often than not. When we become completely pure, then our thoughts are completely wrapped around Krishna. And we can never forget Krishna. So this is the cycle that we go through. Coming in this world, not thinking of Krishna, then thinking of Krishna, but there's always breaks because our attention gets diverted. And then eventually we can never forget Krishna throughout. Just like when they asked Srila Prabhupada, when did you become a pure devotee? Prabhupada said there was never a time when I did not forget, when there was never a time when I never remembered Krishna. Even at the age of 4. From the age of 4, I was always remembering Krishna, always Krishna conscious. So the whole idea is that as sadhakas, this is the goal, this is the objective. Somehow or other, we want to constantly bring Krishna in our life, constantly associate with Krishna in different ways, so that our mind, our thoughts can be diverted and constantly around Krishna. Then Prabhupada says, Kamsa, Jarasandha, Shishupal, and other demons like them were also always wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna, but they were absorbed in a different way, namely unfavorably, or thinking him to be a powerful man only. Therefore, Kamsa and Shishupal are not on the same level as pure devotees like Vidura, the Pandavas, and the Yadavas. So therefore, Prabhupada is saying we need to become wrapped in the thought of Krishna favorably. And it does not matter whether we are at home or leaving home, whether we are renounced or not renounced. The whole objective of our life is to be Krishna conscious, to be conscious, to be thoughtful of Krishna. There's a wonderful pastime of Tukaram. Tukaram was at the Ganges. Prabhupada was talking about how one should come to see whole, pure devotees and hear from them. So there was one envious person who did not like Tukaram. So he came to see Tukaram. And he saw Tukaram near the bank of the Ganges. So he came and because he didn't like Tukaram, he was envious of him, he spat at his face. So Tukaram, he reacted in a very exemplary way. He went into the Ganges, dipped himself, purified himself, and came out and continued chanting Krishna's names. The man thought, nope, he didn't, Tukaram didn't react nicely with my spitting. Okay, let me spit it at it again. So he spat again on his face. Tukaram went back into the Ganges, dipped himself, and came out. And this happened 108 times. After the 108th time, the man was, he was like bewildered, and he asked Tukaram, why are you not getting why are you not getting angry? And Tukaram said, why should I get angry? You actually, helping me by bathing in the Ganges. So I should be thanking you, not getting angry at you. That because of you, I have an opportunity to associate with Mother Ganga and purify myself. How wonderful. Thank you very much. So here we see, Tukaram being grateful for something that ordinarily people would be reactive and people would think it's unfavorable. but he took something which is unfavorable to actually be favorable and continued his Krishna consciousness. It did not interrupt his Krishna consciousness. Generally, when there's a favorable environment, we are able to continue our Krishna consciousness. And when some unfavorable event transpires, then we get derailed. Here we see with Tukaram, Saint Tukaram, even an unfavorable event inspired him to continue his Krishna consciousness. And he became grateful even for that unfavorable event. So we can learn from Saint Tukaram how to how to take even favorable and unfavorable events as impetus to continue to remember Krishna and have Krishna wrapped into our thoughts constantly. Prabhupada continues, Maharaj Yudhishthira was also wrapped in the thought of Lord Krishna and his associates at Dwarka. Otherwise, he could not have asked all about them from Vidura. Maharaj Yudhishthira was therefore on the same level of devotion as Vidura, although engaged in the state affairs of the kingdom of the world. And this is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. And this glory that is mentioned here will manifest more and more as time unfolds, because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has predicted that in the future, judges will be wearing tilak. There will be people in the corporate world wearing tilak. That means being devotees, not just full-time devotees in the temple having Vaishnava attire, but no, there will be professional people who have professional occupational work in the corporate field, dressed as devotees, engaged in their duties, but representing the Vaishnava culture. This will be the glory as time unfolds and Krishna consciousness spreads. We'll see this more and more. Just like with Yudhishthira Maharaj as a king, he's completely Krishna conscious, thinking of Krishna. So the point here is that we want to try to cultivate consciousness of Krishna. And whenever we get that opportunity to associate with each other, the objective is this, to remember Krishna and never forget him. And the more we do that, it'll become second nature that we'll not be able to forget Krishna. Just remembering Krishna is purifying. The reason we trying to remember Krishna is so that we can purify our life and rekindle our loving relationship again. So therefore, it's a very important and great need for us. Whenever we come together, this should be the principle. And anything against this principle, right, is disservice. Anything against remembering Krishna is unfavorable, is anukul, is not favorable, is, no, we want anukul, we want something that's favorable, right? Anything that's unfavorable, that destroys bhakti or that destroys remembering Krishna, we don't want that. We want to remove that from our own personal life, as well as when we're associating with others. Text 12. Ityukto dharmarajena sarvam tat samavarnayat yathanu bhutam kramaso vina yadukula shayam. Thus being questioned by Maharaj Yudhishthira, Mahatma Vidura gradually described everything he had personally experienced, except news of the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. So Vidura began to share his experience, and as he was sharing all the different experiences, when he came to the point, or when he was sharing all the experience, but he never talked about the question that Yudhishthira Maharaj asked him in relation to what happened in Dwarka. That specific experience that Vidura had, he did not share. And Prabhupada in the purport next verse in the purport is going to share with us why. Nanva priyam durvishaha nrinam swayam upastitam navedayat sa karunau dukhitan drashtum akshama. Compassionate Mahatma Vidura could not stand to see the Pandavas distressed at any time. Therefore, he did not disclose this unpalatable and unbearable incident, because calamities come on their own accord. So the sad news he did not share. Prabhupada in the purport. According to Niti Shastra, civic laws, one should not speak an unpalatable truth to cause distress to others. Distress comes upon us in its own way by the laws of nature. So one should not aggravate it by propaganda. For a compassionate soul like Vidura, especially in his dealings with the beloved Pandavas, it was almost impossible to disclose an unpalatable piece of news like the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. Therefore, he purposefully refrained from it. So very interesting, Niti Shastra, according to Niti Shastra, interesting point the Prabhupada is highlighting. Vidura could not share bad news because he did not want to increase the distress or cause distress to the Pandavas. Vidura didn't say, oh, did you hear about what happened to the Yadavas? Oh, let me tell you. We find that in Kali Yuga, this principle is even enjoyed. Right? People thrive and enjoy propagating bad news. If you look at the media is filled with bad news. And due to that, people develop a bad habit of even taking advantage and enjoying giving even worse news. So for example, you come to someone and you say, oh, you know what, did you hear? This happened to this person. Or let's say, for example, well, did you hear 200 people were killed in this incident? And then you tell them, no, that's nothing. 1,000 people got killed here. This type of dialogue is unfavorable. Those who in this type of dialogue are actually enjoying bad news. It's a bad habit. So Vidura's example is very, very pertinent to us, especially, for example, in social media circles, right? Propagating bad news. So it becomes second nature. You just put on the social media and there it goes. And you are now increasing the distress of others. So Vidura is very sensitive. The news is going to come anyway. By the appropriate channels, it's going to come to the Pandavas. They're going to know about it. So they're going to hear about Krishna leaving. We're going to hear about that in the coming chapters. But Vidura is showing us that we shouldn't be the carrier of bad news. Now, he's not doing it artificially. He genuinely does not want to cause more distress. And therefore, naturally, he is restraining himself from sharing this bad news that Krishna and the Yadavas have left this world. So it's a very, very wonderful lesson that we should try to increase only the positive news, share only that which is positive, and ultimately share only that which is inspiring and Krishna consciousness to those that we meet. And if we have to share bad news, right, then, or unpalatable news, then let that come on its own accord, according to whatever appropriate channels may be there. But at least from our perspective, we can keep focus on the good, and it's a good practice. He's Grace Burijan Prabhu, who we studied under Bhagavad Gita. He's teaching us Bhagavad Gita. He was making the point, and even Bhagavatam, he was making the point that when he read this verse, then he also tried to apply it his own life. Right? That whenever there was anything bad, he would not say anything. He would just carry on like, even if he knew it, he would just carry on like he never heard it. And then someone would come and share that same bad news to him, and he would say, oh, okay, okay, that. And then he would, he would just be like neutral, and he noticed that eventually everybody gets to know the news. So he did not broadcast the bad news, but the bad news gets to everyone sooner or later. In that way, he was sharing that he tried to apply this principle personally himself by not being the carrier of bad news. So it's interesting lesson that we can learn from Vidura. All right, and that brings us to the end of these short verses from 8 to 13. Kvantarat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We got load shedding, so we had to cut the session a little short. But yes, so the point of pure devotees transforming wherever they travel into places of pilgrimage, that is in South Africa. We are blessed that Srila Prabhupada came to South Africa, and as Shaman was saying, because of that we have Krishna consciousness, and we have to try to share this blessing to others as well. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Are there any questions or comments anyone has on the points that we covered?
Doesn't need too hasty to broadcast these things because you take on those qualities, you take on those qualities.
So Madhuri just sharing, one time we were taking Sachinara Maharaj, driving into a program or to the temple, and in the car he mentioned, he asked about South Africa, and Madhuri started telling him about Zuma and Zuma's rape cases, and immediately Sachinara Maharaj interrupted and he said we shouldn't be too eager to share such things because we also then start to attract those same qualities. So same principle, we shouldn't be eager to share negative news or negative, even negative incidents, right? It may not be negative news. Somebody did something, or somebody has certain bad qualities or bad nature. If you start thinking and contemplating about that bad qualities or bad nature, you're attracting that. It's the same principle. If I'm thinking of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada's glorious qualities, I attract those qualities. And that's what we want to do. In fact, we want to create a culture of only trying to see the good in everything. Like we heard about Tukuram, how he took, a negative incident and saw it in Krishna conscious light. So we also want to cultivate that same consciousness. That is really Krishna consciousness. And we see Srila Prabhupada was able to do that. He was able to see, even where there was apparent disservice, Prabhupada was able to see the sincerity of practice in the devotees and bring that out, amplify that. This is why people became so attracted to Srila Prabhupada, because where others would see it as disservice, where others would see it as an obstacle or you not being productive, Srila Prabhupada saw the sincerity. In fact, like one devotee recollects, she was just chanting and Srila Prabhupada came and said, thank you. And she was thinking, just see Srila Prabhupada saying thank you just because I'm chanting. And that exchange impacted her in such a great way. We find Andhra Prabhu, he mentioned when he was having kirtan and Prabhupada said Jai. And just that response that Prabhupada appreciated him doing Sankirtan was so powerful that Jai practically stayed for him for the rest of his life, inspiring him to continue Sankirtan, continue to chant, because it reminded him that every time he does Sankirtan, Prabhupada's pleased. Prabhupada is saying Jai. So that gave him so much inspiration. So in this way, we want to try to create a culture of remembering Krishna.
Like Prabhupada said, you climb the ladder, you don't when you go up.
So another point Madhuri is making is Vidura, Yudhishthira Maharaj was, even though he achieved so much, won the battle of Kurukshetra, and the king, etc., still he was still grateful to Vidura. He never forgot. And we know that in Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada gives a definition of gratefulness. And one of Krishna's qualities is Krishna is exceptionally grateful. Anyone who chants Hare Krishna, Prabhupada writes, Krishna is eternally grateful. And Prabhupada says that normally if you do something little, if you do some little thing to someone, then you should be a little grateful. If somebody does even something more, then you should be a little more grateful. But with Krishna, you do little service and Krishna becomes eternally grateful. That's like you did something eternally. So that's glorious. And Yudhishthira Maharaj never forgot all the services that Vidura rendered. So he was always grateful. So therefore, Prabhupada makes the point that anybody that helps us in our journey in Krishna consciousness, we should always be grateful and appreciative of that. We should never not be grateful. Like the Mayavadis, Prabhupada says, the guru helps you and then you kick the guru, right? Or like you use the ladder to go to the top and then you kick the ladder because you don't need it. So Prabhupada says in Krishna consciousness, that's not the process. In fact, one time Prabhupada was walking in Mayapur and there was like a ditch. So Prabhupada, so the disciple jumped over the ditch, then turned around to help give Srila Prabhupada a hand so that Prabhupada could cross the ditch. So he extended his hand, Prabhupada held his hand, and he helped Prabhupada to cross over. Then Prabhupada pushed him down. And Prabhupada said, this is the Mayavadis. They take help and then they push you, they reject you. So this is not Krishna consciousness. Right, Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for the wonderful class. Really lots to learn from hearing about amazing personalities like Vidura and Tukaram. When Yamaraj comes as Vidura, who does his job at a time? Can you give some so-called unfavorable event that may be turned out favorable on your side? Okay, so the first point is who took Yamaraja's service. So all the posts like Vidura, when Yamaraj comes as Vidura, his post is taken. I read that last week. I'll have to get that name. Forgot his name, but there's a personality that actually takes his place again and continues. So the different posts, just like sometimes Indra, gets cursed, for example. Then there's Indra is a post. So his post gets occupied again by another demigod. Krishna would reinstate somebody to continue that service. So even Yamaraj, his service continues. Even Vidura as a personality, who's the demigod, let's say as Yamaraj comes as Vidura, his service continues. So there's definitely a personality that continues. Then, okay, so in the second one, can you just give some unfavorable event that maybe turned out favorable on your side. So Madhuri is giving me an example to share in that shows the same example, same point. There was the minister and the king. So the minister was a Krishna conscious minister, and every time there would be some incident, some negative incident, unfavorable event, then the minister would say, it's Krishna's arrangement. So one day the king, the minister, so the king's finger got cut. So when the king's finger got cut, the minister said, "Oh king, it's the Lord's mercy, right? We should take it as Krishna's mercy." So the king was very upset that how can, my finger got cut, how can you say it's God's mercy? And he didn't like this response of the minister. So he said, today I'm going out hunting and I don't want you to come. In fact, because you made this remark, you should be kept into jail. So he put the minister into jail. And the king then went off on his own with the rest of his few ministers, and off they went. And they were attacked by some dacoits. So the dacoits, Kali worshippers, they were looking for a offering to offer to Kali, a human species, and they found the king. So they captured the king and they brought the king to their camp to offer to Kali. So they prepared the king's body, and while preparing the king's body, they noticed that the king's finger was cut. So then they went to the head priest and they told the head priest, we cannot offer this human species to goddess Kali because it is defective. The king's finger, this person's finger is cut, so we have to release him. So they released the king. So through this whole episode, the king obviously was going to be killed, and his life was threatened. So he was fearing what's the worst. And now all of a sudden, the fact that his finger was cut, it became favorable under the circumstance. They freed him. So he was thinking, wow, actually, the minister was right. My finger getting cut was actually favorable. So what apparently seemed unfavorable, it is Krishna's mercy. It became favorable. So he was thinking, okay, that's amazing. Let me go and release the minister because he's right. So he released the minister and he said, minister, you're right. This was favorable. But I have another question. How is it that me putting you in jail was favorable? And that it's the Lord's arrangement. So the minister said, see, if you had not put me in prison jail and I had to now come with you, they would have captured me also. Your finger was cut and they would free you, but my fingers are all fine. They would capture me and kill me and offer me. So therefore, that was also the Lord's arrangement, and that was also favorable. So therefore, we find this way both incidents were seen as favorable. In most cases, we can't see the favorability at that point in time. After some months, after some years, you look back, then you can actually see, wow, this was Krishna's arrangement, and it actually turns out to be favorable. All right, so Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for the Krishna Katha. Sweet as always. I find it quite interesting how devotees speak. It always starts with a short list of questions without any interruptions. Then the respondent or the person being questioned then provides response at length. There is so different to the way we have conversations. Often we talk over each other and don't wait for people to finish. We just cut them off. Very eye-opening. The art of listening is truly a skill, one that's only taught practically by Srimad Bhagavatam. Truly mind-blowing. Thank you. Right, so yes, the Bhagavatam we find has many aspects, and we always want to learn the art of listening. It's an important skill. We find here Vidura is listening, Yudhishthira is listening, and throughout the Bhagavatam, right, there's so many personalities asking and inquiring. So it's an important skill. Srila Prabhupada was also very, very expert at listening. Navakishore Devidasi says, Yamaraj, place took by Aryama. Right, correct. That's his name. He's one of the 12 Adityas and rules for 100 years. Thank you very much for highlighting that. Aryama. So Aryama is the one that took over his Yamaraj's place. Thank you very much for beautiful Krishnaka. Very nice example, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for bringing that. There's a verse here that Madhudasi wants me to share from Vara Purana. If my devotee is unable to remember me at the time of death because of disturbances felt within the body at that time, then I shall remember my devotee and take him back to my supreme abode. So we were talking about remembering Krishna. So here's another reason why it's good to practice remembering Krishna. If you remember Krishna, okay, let's track back a little. If I remember, so I'm going to remember a friend that was serving with me who now moved to America. So I'm remembering him. He has no clue that I'm remembering him. Now I'm remembering Krishna. I'm remembering Krishna, who is Damodar in this month, who's bound by the ropes of love by Mother Yashoda. That remembrance of Krishna is extremely powerful and potent. Now, my first remembrance of the devotee who is in America, he may not remember, he may not even be conscious of me remembering him. But because he is related to Krishna, Krishna responds and knows that I'm thinking of him. So just see, in both situations, the fact that I remember the devotee and the fact that I remembered Krishna, baby Krishna, in both situations, Krishna is fully aware and conscious that I remembered a devotee in relation to him and Krishna in the form of Damodar. When I remember Krishna, Krishna becomes pleased. And Krishna's gratitude increases that we are trying to remember him. And this gratitude increases and increases, and Krishna becomes more and more inclined to help us to such an extent that if it happens that at a time of death, due to some illness or due to whatever circumstance that I'm dying in, I am not able to remember Krishna, then Krishna will remember me. Why? Because I have tried as much as possible sincerely to remember Krishna. Therefore, do not underestimate remembrance of Krishna. Do not take it lightly. When we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're remembering Krishna. When we're hearing the Bhagavatam, remembering Krishna. When we're reading Prabhupada's books, we're remembering Krishna. When we're rendering service to Krishna, we're remembering Krishna. So in every way that we are coming in contact with Krishna now, we are remembering him. Do not take it lightly. Krishna does not take it lightly. So we should not take it lightly. Thank you very much for everyone's feedback and association. You are most welcome to attend tomorrow's class at ISKCON Lanesia. Our topic is going to be the best mother, the best son, the best month, and the best verse. And we'll share about this beautiful pastime of Mother Yashoda binding Krishna and some lessons from there. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bo.